Welcome to Crosstalk. Tonight we discuss a very interesting topic, the state of the nation. We take a shift from the pulpit, from the church, and what the church is saying about whatever is happening around us, and just focusing on what young people and aspiring leaders think about our state of the nation. When you look around the political regroupings, you see the sunroof speeches and off-road rhetorics from our politicians. I think it should concern every well-meaning Kenyan that we are at a crisis and we are at a crossroad. But not to us who believe as well, because we can have political wrangles and political realignments, but our focus remains on Jesus. And I think that's where we get our strength and hope that everything will change, even as we aspire to move Kenya ahead of, or move Kenya to the next step in terms of progression and political development. Joining me today to discuss the state of the nation is Janet Karimi. Janet Karimi is from Siasa Place. Siasa Place is a youth-led civic education or civic organization that ideally creates a platform and awareness for young people to join mainstream politics and leadership and matters governance. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you. Joining
us as well is Ben Mulwa. Ben Mulwa is not new to some of us who have been part of Crosstalk. He's the current Secretary General of the National Economic Development Party. Welcome.
Asante sana. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Yes.
It's been a while.
Now that you come from a political party, yes. It's good to start with you in terms of your current view on what our state of the nation looks like.
John, I must admit that, that's one of the most difficult conversations to have today. And I have been consistent in my political engagements since I was a Gen Z of their years. From way back in 2002, when we were heavily involved in the support system to install Mwai Kibaki as the president, God bless his soul. And our determination and our passion then was informed by the understanding of the tragedy that the Moi regime had become for this country. It is so unfortunate, John, that today we can sit here and look at a scion of the former president Moi, making Moi look like a saint. William Ruto has proven to be the worst disaster that has ever happened in the history of this country. It was unimaginable that we could ever sink to where we are during the Kenyatta time, during the Moi time, during the Kibaki time. Uhuru was a mega disappointment. We never imagined we could get worse than that. And there are three ultimate measures of any society the world over. And the minute you lose it, you are something worse than a banana republic. Today, our healthcare is dead. Our national security system is dead. And our public education system is dead. It is a shame that we have William Ruto sitting on a sunroof from Monday to Monday, and he cannot even show a single school that he has been able to build in the last 2 years. At least when I walk across villages across the whole country, I see Moi girls, Moi this, Moi this, Moi that. At least Moi invested in our education, Moi invested in our healthcare system, and our security system never got to the tragedy that William Ruto has gotten us.
And somebody would argue that we have relative peace.
Yes.
As a nation, so that would mean then our security
no, we don't have
and
peace.
stability.
What we have is space that has allowed people to speak up. In fact, if Ruto was president during Moi's time in the old constitution, perhaps this country would have been shut down a year ago. The only difference is that today we enjoy space and technology that is making Ruto become the dictator and the tragedy he insisting on becoming. Okay. And I'll give you an example. Last week you saw the tragedy of how they arrested Grace at the hospital. If that had happened during the Moi regime, it would have taken a few days or a few weeks before the whole nation knew about it. But they did that, and within 5 minutes, the whole country was on fire.
Yeah, we are coming to that ideally, because Janet here was part of the movement that we saw last year, June, agitating for good governance, and that was because of the finance bill. If you sit today, what would you say is your take on the state of the nation? Whatever you were fighting for last year, would you say there's progress or there's lack of it?
Okay, personally, the state of the nation right now, last year you saw the younger generation going to the streets to demonstrate with regards to the Finance Bill 2024, which in itself, they managed to chuck some of the articles that were inhuman, honestly, therein. But thereafter, the conversation didn't stop there. We went ahead and started calling for the reconstitution, or rather, firing of the cabinet secretaries, which the president went ahead and did. But at the same time, returned the same people. It was like reshuffling. We did not say we wanted the cabinet to be reshuffled. We wanted people who are well versed with what they are doing, not reshuffling them into different departments that they actually don't understand what should be done therein. We went now ahead to calling for reformation on people, the plight of the people on movement of like the SHA replacing NHIF. And I was talking with someone just the other day who actually told me that people are going to complain, maybe you haven't gone to the hospital and actually encountered this SHA one-on-one, but actually it is not working, honestly. And when the government was called out with regards to the same, a leader stood up in national television and actually went ahead and said, if you're not satisfied with the services of the government with regards to SHA, go ahead and take on private insurance. But why am I paying for government services, or rather, why am I paying taxes if I cannot get the benefits that I should be getting? You've seen the salaries, the people's salaries are being deducted. We are paying NHIF, we are paying NSSF, but at the end of the day, we are not getting the services that are required. Yes. Okay.
Ben, in terms of services, we've seen the current regime move around the country. We've seen the president was recently in western part of the country and is launching projects. Would you say is doing this as a service delivery or is already in a campaign mode? Because it seems like 3 years into this government, we've never stopped beating the drums of campaigns.
You know, John Paul, I'll tell you something. If you take a walk along this street, I'm happy that it's restored to Dick, because there was the mess when you guys were, people were trying to push Atoli to be named, or the road to be named after Atoli. And I think that was a disservice to the people of this region or this area. But if you walk down that street and you find a tortoise on top of a street light, several things will come to your mind. First, this tortoise did not get itself up there. This tortoise has no ability to operate or navigate from up there. This tortoise has no understanding of what it needs to do when it is up there. And this tortoise, the only way it can come down is to crash. And that is William Ruto for you.
But he did get there through an electoral process.
Yes, it did, through an electoral process.
So it's the people who put him
you
there.
See, what I'm trying to point out is there is a person who placed that tortoise on top of that street pole or that street light. So when it is left up there, it is out of depth. And that is why William Ruto now has elected to sit on a vehicle or on a 4x4 sunroof from Monday to Monday, because he does not even understand what it means to be the President of the Republic of Kenya. He does not understand what it means to sit in an office and work. He does not understand what is expected of him as the head of state, and he does not understand what he is supposed to do in line with those who put him in office to move this country forward.
So does that mean then the course of Kenya Kwanza government is...
It was dishonest.
Lost?
It was dishonest from the outset. Let's put it bluntly. The entire formation and the entire promotion of the campaign was on the foundation of dishonesty. And that is why he is out of depth in terms of understanding now. And that's why he cannot even understand why Kenyans are making noise. You know, that is actually the most frustrating bit of it. He does not even understand why Kenyans are making noise. He does not even understand why Kenyans are agitated. Yet, Mzee Mwai Kibaki left a functional basic education system in this country. I want to believe that Janet here is a beneficiary of that. It is dead. At least Uhuru Kenyatta left a functional healthcare system. NHIF used to support patients from every corner of this country, including treatment overseas. That is dead. National security, it is a tragedy. And over and above that, we have continued to play petty politics with critical economic functions, like agriculture. William Ruto sat on a sunroof last week, we are not talking about last year or 4 years ago, and said he has paid bonuses to farmers in Mumias.
Of course, we are coming from a background of a well-laid constitutional provisions of how you can remove a head of state from office, right? It seems like what young people, the people who are against the government agitating for is not the provision of the constitution. Yes, we want the president out of the office, but through social media. And that's why people are saying young people are making noise on social media. But on the other side, the political regroupings are looking at these young people as a voting bloc. Janet, do you want the president to come out of the office regardless of the constitutional provisions?
That cannot happen. Like, there are laid out procedures in the constitution. First of all, we really thank the 2010 constitution because it's a constitution that protects itself regardless of anything. You've seen the case with the BBI. They tried to amend the constitution, but the baby died before it was even born. The other thing is like, before you actually remove the president from office, there are laid out procedures in the constitution of how you should go about it. And there are characteristics such as gross misconduct that should form part of the reasons or grounds as to why you want the president removed. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be a committee that is chosen to investigate the behavior of the president to see if he has really met the grounds set out in the constitution for his removal as president. But there's also the conversation where there's the voting in parliament. And the parliamentarians themselves say that most of the time, for instance, when they are voting for a bill, you've had parliamentarians saying that they get calls from the top office to vote a certain way. Are you certain that if we go through the constitutional process, we're going to manage to remove the president? I don't think so. So what we should do is call out a lot of people, a lot of young people, because there was voter apathy during the last elections. People were like, why should I vote? What's the benefit of voting? Even if I vote, we know who's going to win. But right now, the younger generation is politically woke. People want to register as voters. That is the only way, the surest bet that we have to remove the president from office and vote for the person that you think is going to, you know, tend to the needs of the common mwananchi instead of, like Ben here is saying, being a politician rather than a leader. And that begins with constitution of IEBC. It's 2 years since the election, rather 2 or 3, and we still don't have an IEBC that's constituted.
At least now the selection panel is in place.
Yeah, it's in place, but I feel like sometimes, no offense, I feel like the priorities of this government are drunk priorities, honestly.
Okay.
Yes.
She spoke about being woke.
Yes.
Does that come? Of course, it gives us the freedom, and our Constitution 2010 gives us the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech. But does this come in a box excluding the responsibility?
No.
Because that's what also we've seen. If you look at the talks on our social media and how we are speaking to the government, yes, we are riding on the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, but the aspect of responsibility is missing.
To a large extent, depends on how people want to define responsibility. But one thing that we must all agree, I usually consider that rights without responsibility amount to impunity. And the biggest group that has consistently displayed that is the political class. And it's a good thing you have mentioned about political regroupings and all these kinds of, I don't know whether you want us to talk about that now. It is a beautiful thing that the younger generation of this country today has woken up to the reality that by failing to participate in electoral processes, you are indirectly electing the wrong leaders, end up with the wrong leadership, end up with an insensitive leadership that has no business or no interest whatsoever in addressing your challenges, and you must suffer those consequences. And it's a beautiful thing that the younger generation, as we have christened them, the Gen Z, have suffered those consequences. I feel sad every year when I watch the CS education reading out KCSE and KCP results. One statistic that we consistently ignore as a country is that for the last more than 10 years now, we churn out an average of more than 1 million young people into the job market in this country without any iota of investment towards expanding the economy to be able to create opportunities and jobs for these people. So we have been stoking a fire. And the finance bill, I was in a discussion yesterday with some friends of mine. The finance bill was just a trigger. It's like if you have this room filled with hay, dry grass. The grass can sit here for a whole year, but you only need to light up one matchstick and the entire room is raised down. And what had transpired last year, which I consider a turning point, because Kenya is never going back to where it was before June 2024. It is never. Ruto has refused to understand that, but Kenya is never going back. He has tried to cobble up and come up with all manner of characters into his cabinet. It will not work. We are never going back.
Because he's doing all this in attempt to reaching out.
No, he is coming from a tragic school of thought where he believes the kind of politicking they were doing in the 90s when he was a Gen Z of then, when he was YK 92, he still thinks the strategies of 1992 can work in this country 30 years later. I have very sad news for you, Mr. President. It will not work. And the frustration is displayed to the extent that a whole president can go camp in a village and launch a transformer, then move from there, launch a water tap, then move. I mean, it shows this is somebody now who is out of depth. It's like picking, and with all due respect, we have say the matatu drivers we have at the country bus station, and then you pick a driver from Eldoret Express bus, take him straight to JKIA, give him a Boeing 747 or 787, the Dreamliner, and tell him now, let's fly.
Okay.
Now that is where we are.
All right.
Yes.
And now that he's flying it, and he's...
No, we are just 2 inches away from crashing.
How do we make sure that we don't crash? Yeah, because we can talk about all these frustrations, and it seems that out of every 5 Kenyan you speak to, 4
No, 5.5
are very frustrated with the government. But how do we make sure that we don't crash, as Ben puts it?
I feel like civic education is going to come in handy.
Yes.
And I'm going to give you an example with what the president did last year. He called for a meeting on X.
Yes.
And said that he's ready to listen to the plight of the youth. And then he set up a link, but he gave very specific people the platform to speak.
Yes.
And if you tried to join that X Live, if you had tweeted Ruto must go, most of the people wouldn't be allowed to join that X app. And then he went ahead into the villages, spreading propaganda, which is in the Constitution, and it says, Article 33 of the Constitution, freedom of expression, it's provided there. But the limitation of freedom of expression is spreading hate speech and propaganda. The president went ahead, like he says, in a sunroof, in the villages, and told the people, ati siniliwaita huko X, niwasikilize, but they didn't show up, which was a lie. Because he knows that most of the people in the rural areas do not have access to the internet. Not most of them are fortunate enough to have access to the internet. So he's lying to the people. We are trying so much as a country to make sure that all of us are at the same level. As you see, most of the things that Siasa Place does is civic education in these rural areas. Giving the young people a platform where they can talk about their needs, and also educating the younger people about, not younger people per se, but everyone in that society, the roles of each leader, from the governor, from the MP to the MP to the MCA, because there is the misconception that the work that the governor is supposed to do, most of the people believe it's the MCA that is supposed to do. So I feel like it starts from misinformation and disinformation. That is something that we have to fight so much as a country to stop, because the people in Nairobi might be saying Ruto must go and so on and so forth. But when Ruto goes to the villages and gives them, not necessarily Ruto, but any politician goes to the village and gives them a different perspective, the people are still going to say that the president is still a good person, the president is still delivering. Like he's saying, he launched a transformer. You see, it's the small things, but they don't know, they don't have the bigger picture. It's upon us, each and every person, to take it upon us to educate each and every person so that we can be on the same platform.
All right.
Yeah.
I get to hear you. I think there's also the aspect of mistrust, where we expect the president to deliver, to speak to the nation and address some of the concerns of the projects that he's delivering to the people. But we don't trust him.
That's a problem,
All that thought. We take a short break. When we come back, we look at, can the president course correct? Is there an opportunity between now and 2027 for him to work things around? And it turns out to be the darling of majority of Kenyans in 2027. All right. We take a short break. We are looking at the state of the nation. You can be part of this conversation through our SMS line, 20316. Our WhatsApp line is 0786 316 316. We'll be right back after the break.
We are living in a lost and broken world, constantly bombarded by messages of hate and atrocities. But with God, we can overcome. Find hope and restoration on the go through life-changing shows on the Family Media app.
And then you will lose yourself and gain the world. And Jesus said, what good is it?
Get to stream Family TV and Family Radio 316 straight from your phone. Catch up on a show you missed or create video streaming playlists by saving and watching videos from our huge variety of shows at your own convenience. Download the Family Media app, available for all Android and iOS users on the Google Play Store and Apple Store respectively. Family Media, keeping Jesus on the airwaves.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. We are talking about the state of the nation, and with me in studio is Janet Karimi from Siasa Place, and also Ben Mulwa, who is the Secretary General at the National Economic Development Party. Before the break, we were looking at how frustrated we are with the aspects of this government. But there's a question of, can the president and his administration course correct at this point, or it's too late?
If you allow me, the world over and historically, it is known that things usually never go wrong. They start wrong. And where the current President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, finds himself, he is the engineer, the architect, and the designer of his own predicament. Trust me, he has nobody to blame apart from himself.
Not even his advisors?
No,
he has quite a number of them.
No. I had the opportunity to interact with one of his closest allies, so to speak. And he's a respectable elderly man. And I asked him a question. As a senior citizen in this country, why don't you guys advise the president? And you know what his response was? William Ruto is the one who advises you on what to advise him. I am quoting that old man verbatim. So he is his own advisor. If he decides to sit on a sunroof for a whole week, there is nothing anybody around him can do it. Not even these people you keep blaming, Farouk or Oscar. No. He just tells them what. And I think that is a very dangerous trait.
Because most of the times when we see such kind of things happening, yes, the first people we blame are usually the people around the presidency.
No.
We say the president is a good man, but it's the people that surrounds him.
But you see, if you drop sugar here, or if you drop honey here, honey does not attract houseflies, but honey will attract bees. But if you drop chicken poop here, it will attract houseflies and it will not attract bees. So you can only attract advisors that align and match with your character and your energy and your plan and your vision. I think I have answered that to you.
You've answered
I don't
it
need to say anymore. On the question of whether he can redeem himself or not, I think he has a million chances. He's chosen to blow each chance. Then you share on football, penalties imefika. Umewekewa mpira hapa, goal post iko pale. Unaambiwa sasa piga ya kwanza. Unapiga round, unapiga mpira inaenda huko.
So you feel like
unapatiwa ya pili, unapiga inaenda huko. Unapatiwa ya tatu, inaenda huko. Sisi zinakuanga 5. After Ruto has depleted the 5 opportunities.
Because there's
so
the argument.
To me, he is irredeemable.
Because there's the argument that the 25th June incident of last year gave the presidency an opportunity to re-envision the nation and create a clear path moving forward. Of course, we've seen that came with the impeachment of his deputy president, and now there's a political regrouping. That also came with broadening his government. Now we have a broad-based government that now takes into consideration the entire nation. All these things he's trying to do to re-envision the nation to the same path. But there's the question of mistrust. It seems like young people and majority of people who don't align with this kind of politics don't trust him. So how do you, as a president, re-envision a nation who ideally don't trust anything you say?
Okay, I want to make a joke, but it's a bad joke. He said that the president needs to go for a mental check.
Yes.
But I think there's a thin line between mental check and exorcism. I feel like the devil is using our president. There is a time on Twitter that a Rwandan, like it was a Rwandan lady who tweeted and said, some people were criticizing the situation in Rwanda, but she said, I'm going to leave you Kenyans to your government to deal with you. And the government is really dealing with us.
Yeah.
And every time the president stands, even making the state of giving the press, like presidential address, the president lies. It's like he's no longer a president.
No.
He lies for a living. Yeah? So I'm just going to say one thing. The president needs to stop lying.
Yes.
Access to information under Article 35 of the Constitution means that you tell the people the state as it is. We've seen the Treasury telling us about the debt has risen. Yeah? We want transparency. We want accountability. We want, if you say this, you do exactly what you said. We don't want you to preach water and drink wine. Yeah? Follow the law. Stop thinking that you're above the law. Follow the law. Listen to the plight of the people. And I think he might try redeeming himself. But at the end of the day, serve the people.
The people.
That is why you are appointed to be the president of Kenya. Serving the people.
The people.
Yeah.
The political regrouping, is this in an attempt to serve the people? Or is this also the alternative we are looking at? If the president was to vacate office as a one-term president, are the options being presented now anything to go by?
You know, actually, I get mentally exhausted and my brain cells get tired when I watch what the average politician is doing in this country. And to me, this is an indictment of the political class that we have had. It is a confirmation that we have a political class across the divide that is so insensitive to the realities, to the extent that to them everything requires a political solution. And for that, the president is actually leading from the front. That's why when the agitation from last year, the demonstrations and all that hit a crescendo, the president quickly thought, oh, hii ni siasa. So let me bring a few politicians on board. Let me reach out to Baba, ndio wakuje tuone kama kelele itapungua. Yet that was not the issue. Then the pressure didn't cease. Then he went to Gatundu to look for former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Then I was like, voila, now we are sorted. At least Baba is on board, Uhuru is coming on board. Sasa siasa itatulia. Brought in very interesting characters into the cabinet. And I mean extremely interesting characters. There we are. Mutahi Kagwe is now supposed to vaccinate our cows. Somebody else is supposed to switch off X. Who is the other guy?
Lee Kinyanjui is now in trade, yeah.
And that's why I was telling you, I get exhausted because even the political regrouping, the president is leading from the front on one end, and this other disillusioned lot, when you interrogate them, they have not stated one single thing that would amount even to a plan to address the real issues that this country is facing.
And what are these real issues that you
The
want
economy.
to address?
The economy.
What should be
The
the plan?
economy.
What should be the plan?
And
Because I think
in a few seconds, allow me to take you on a crash course of what must happen. And there are no two ways about it. We can be on the streets for 100 years. We can be on X for 1 million years. We can sit on these talk shows for 500 years. But one thing must happen. And that is the only thing that the entire existing political class is incapable of understanding and is incapable of delivering on. This country has experienced 2 revolutions for us to be where we are. The first revolution was the fight for independence. We had to get rid of the Mbeberu to attain self-rule and self-governance. That was a national commitment and a national initiative and effort. Then we attained our own government, started off extremely well, then suddenly veered off the road. And by the time we needed to recover and retrieve ourselves from the mess, we had done a couple of years of first Kenyatta and another 24 years of Moi. And then came the second revolution, civil rights and liberties, what we call democracy. And it was a painful journey that culminated even into the constitution that we enjoy today. Believe you me now, we have the space and the democratic space to thrive as a nation, except just for a few elements that even Janet is mentioning here, who are creatures of impunity and lawlessness, and they are still insisting on taking us back there. So the democratic space is there. The independence is there. That's why we're able to speak today the way we are speaking. 30 years ago, you can imagine in the year 1994, for us to sit and have this kind of a conversation. Zile Subaru zilikuwa zinaitwa Mariam. Yes,
So the Subaru-
zingekuwa tayari hapa nje.
Yeah.
But now what must happen, JP, with the, because to me this is really where I am investing my time, resources and soul into. This country must experience an economic revolution. That is the only thing we have never addressed. It was a priority in session paper number 1 of 1965. 60 years later, we are still talking about the eradication of poverty. And poverty is not watching or people walking around in Viraka and all that. Poverty is what I spoke about, the incapability to expand the economy to accommodate and address the needs of every citizen, whether educated or not, whether young or old, whether in the rural areas or in the urban areas.
Okay.
And that is the solution. And until and unless we are able to address the economy, believe you me, we can only sink lower and get worse than where we are.
Which is unfortunate if we do find ourselves in a deeper pit than where we are as a nation at the moment.
Yeah.
But it also seems, Janet, that this is the first time when the opposition is not a political party. Because we have seen the political opposition is now in government. So the first time also we have Kenyans as their own opposition to some of the policies and projects that the government is doing. So when we look at it, how far can people who have mobilized themselves speak to issues of social justice, corruption, when ourselves, we don't sit in the National Assembly. Our representatives are now part of the executive, unfortunately, yet it is an independent institution. Yeah. So how do we get people to a point where issues of social justice, you mentioned the lady, the 61-year-old lady she was just picked from a hospital with around 20 police officers. It's an issue of social justice because she was demanding for her rights. So how do we get to a point where the voice and the noises that we make on the streets and on the social media platforms get to a policy platform where we can discuss them as policy issues that can be presented to the government? Because the talk of we are leaderless, we are rudderless doesn't necessarily create a structure to offer an alternative leadership that this country is looking for.
Okay, I feel like in as much as we are going on social media, number one, we've seen the social media is working.
Yes, it is.
We've seen us demanding for people to be released, the abductees. Some of them have been released. And we've seen the state at which they're being released. Some of them are coming out very traumatized. They can't even talk. You know, they are also telling the stories. We've seen the UN calling out the Kenyan president to actually listen to the plights of the two people during that period where people were actually striking and so on and so forth. But there's also, in as much as we are not in government, the common mwananchi has the platform of the courts under Article 22 of the Constitution, which means an independent person, me as a person, if I'm representing the general needs of the general public, I can actually approach the court via a petition, yeah? if it's a certain, for instance, I'm going to give you an example of something that people didn't feel like the need of doing, is the new funding model.
Yes.
We saw last year students being admitted to universities, but they don't know if they're self-sponsored or if they're government-sponsored. Simply because the government delayed and told them, just admit your kids. We are going to, in a span of 1 month, we're going to tell you if we're going to sponsor this person fully, yes, or they're going to fall part of the partial or completely not support the kid. That meant if I'm, like, for instance, myself, my parents cannot afford to pay for the deficit that the government has said, like, I'm going to pay for 50%, and the other 50% you're supposed to cater for. That meant you gave the parent like a month to raise more than 70,000 for them to actually go ahead and, clear off the debt. No one went, I don't think there's anyone who actually petitioned the court, yes, for the government to actually educate the people either in advance or after. Even now, I'm very sure, unless you're someone who's affected directly by the new funding model, most of the people don't know how it works. So we can use the way of petition. Yes. We can also go ahead in terms of a bill or a proposition to the government, It's good to try. I usually say, like, what's the worst that can happen? You can try, it can bear fruits. But you cannot say you don't know what could have happened if you didn't try. There are channels that we can use. We've tried social media, we've seen it working. But have you also tried engaging the judiciary? There's a rumor that says the judiciary is not now independent. Judges are being bribed so that they can, it's like they are sleeping in the same bed with the government, which at some point seems true. But there's also that option where people actually, for the finance bill, people are being told, yes, it's gonna pass, yeah? But we have the people, the activists, the people who fight for social justice, the people who fight for the laws, yeah? You don't have to be in parliament. Okiya Omtatah started, he wasn't in parliament, but at least he made an impact. While I was in law school, I've read a lot of cases on Okiya Omtatah, like him being a petitioner. We need to take that course, and I feel like a lot of policies are gonna, if you read most of the cases that have been decided in favor of him, you'll see that a lot of policies have actually been put in place.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beyond civic education,
yes,
what next?
I believe now two fundamental things must happen. First is Kenyans. At the end of the day, our ultimate power lies and rests with the ballot. We can speak all the English we want and tweet all we want and say all we want, but at the end of the day, we must make that determination and the decision to participate in the elections. Because that is what the constitutional framework we have currently provides for. That's number one. Number two, the civic education remains critical. Because I was giving you an example earlier. When I look at the current regrouping, political regroupings that we are witnessing, and people now are suddenly getting very excited about the mention of certain names. I don't want to mention the names on the live show, but we know them. And we know their past, we know their history. Exactly the same way we knew the past and the history of the current president. The same people who are currently thinking that those people who are regrouping now could be the solution to the mess that we are in today are the same people who thought William Ruto would be a better president than Uhuru Kenyatta. It is self-defeatist thinking. You cannot keep going to the garbage bin in your house to look for fresh food to cook. Ati mtoto amelia anataka maziwa, unaenda kwa ile kuchokora pahali ulitupa takataka, uangalie ile karatasi ya maziwa ya jana kama iko na maziwa ndani. mtoto amelia ana njaa, unaenda kutafuta ile karatasi ya unga ulitupa. That is what we are doing.
So we are just going back
to Dandora dump site
to get new leaders,
to look for fresh water to drink and to look for food to eat. That generation and that crop of political leaders, they have all been there, some of them since independence, some of them for the last 30, 40 years. They have proven completely incapable of addressing the real challenges that this country is facing. Some of them were extremely resourceful during the agitation for the political and democratic space we enjoy today. But now they exhausted their capability and competence.
Okay.
You cannot do everything. You can never be able to achieve everything. It is time this entire crop steps aside or is left behind. We are not going to ask them to step aside. We are going to step them aside and come up with a political formation that has a grounded understanding of the economic system that must be put in place for this country to move forward.
All right.
Kenya is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, yet the poverty levels and the economic misery that the majority of the population suffers is unacceptable. But we cannot expect the same lot that got us to where we are to be the solution to where we want to go. Yes.
Of course, talking about where we want to be, I remember there was a conference during Kibaki's time, the Kenya we want.
Yes, the Kenya
I wish we could mobilize ourselves to have a national dialogue of the Kenya we want now, and champion the outcomes of that conference to the new Kenya. Yeah, but let me not end this by just asking, as a by the way, what do you like about this current government? One thing that you feel, this one they have done right.
Honestly, I don't know.
Well,
They've done a lot of wrongs.
okay.
So it's really difficult to pinpoint a right for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Ben?
I have been struggling to just find one thing that I can speak about as an achievement for this administration, and it has been a very frustrating exercise for me.
Wow.
Very frustrating.
Maybe in another 3 months we'll bring you back and see if that perspective has changed. But thank you so much, Janet. Thank you, Ben, for your time being on Crosstalk tonight. I think my message to our leaders and those that are in government and those that are charged to offer service to the people should know that to whom much is given, much is expected. And that's our call to the president and to the people that sits in our public service offices. To whom much is given, much is expected. Until next week, have a good evening.